Hello everyone, welcome back to Study Room. In this video, we will be studying about forests and wildlife. We need to understand that forests are a very important part of the ecosystem in which we live, and India is one of the 17 mega biodiverse regions of the world. Indian forest types include tropical evergreens, tropical deciduous, swamps, mangroves, subtropical montane, scrub, subalpine, and alpine forests. So these forests support a variety of ecosystems with diverse flora and fauna, and hence this diverse flora and fauna are very much supportive of the animals that live on earth. So forests are a very important part of the ecosystem in which we live. Now we'll be talking about biodiversity. So forests are biodiversity hotspots. One measure of the biodiversity of an area is the number of species found there. And biodiversity can be, there are certain forests which are very rich in biodiversity because they have a large number of species which are found there. So, while defining the term biodiversity, you need to say that it is a measure of the number of species that are found at a certain place, and the biodiversity of that area can be that measure. The main aims of conservation to try and preserve the biodiversity we have inherited, and experiments and field studies suggest that loss of diversity may lead to loss of ecological stability. So that is why we need to preserve the biodiversity that we have in a certain area. Forest and its stakeholder. We need to understand that who are the stakeholders of forests and how are forests so important for us. The people who live in or around forests are dependent on forest produce for various aspects. The forest department, which owns the land and controls the resources from forests. The industrialists, who use various forest produce but are not dependent on the forest in any one area. The wildlife and nature enthusiasts who want to conserve nature in its pristine form. So these are the four stakeholders of forest who are very important and are related to forest. Like, what is stakeholder? Stakeholder is basically the people or the amount of population who are dependent on forest or who are related to forest, and these are the four categories of population who are dependent on forest or are related to forest. We'll be talking about local people as stakeholders of forest. The local people need large quantities of firewood, small timber and thatch that cattle graze in areas or feed on the fodder which is collected from forest. So, we talked about how people are related to forest or are the stakeholders of forest, and local people basically they derive their living from the forest because they get large quantities of these materials or resources from the forest, and hence forest is a very important part of their life. Local people work traditionally for the conservation of forests. Okay, and bamboo is used to make slats for huts and baskets for collecting and storing food materials. Implementation of agriculture, fishing, and hunting are largely made of wood. Also, forests are sites for fishing and hunting. So these are the processes, or these are the factors with which the local people are connected or related to the forest. And as we talked before, that they are instrumental in the conservation of forest because they have certain traditions which help them to conserve the forests. Now we'll be talking about forest department as stakeholders of forest. To plant the trees, huge areas are first cleared of all vegetation. This destroys a large amount of biodiversity in the area. Leaves for fodder, hops for medicine, fruits and nuts for food plantations are useful for the industries to assess specific products and are an important source of revenue for the forest department. Okay, so forest department basically manages the resources of the forest and helps in maintaining the forest culture, right? So forest department is a very instrumental part and are connected to the forest. Next we have the industries as stakeholders of forest. Industries consider the forest as merely a source of raw material for the factories. Since the industries have a greater reach than the local people, they are not interested in the sustainability of the forest in one particular area. And they do not have any stake in ensuring that one particular area should yield an optimal amount of some produce for all generations to come. So that is why they are not much related, but okay, they get the raw materials and that is why they are dependent at on some amount on the forest, right? Then we have the nature enthusiasts who are the stakeholders of forest. The nature and wildlife enthusiasts are in no way dependent on the forest but may have considerable in their management. Okay, the conservationists were initially taken up with large animals like lions, tigers, elephants and rhinoceros. They now recognize the need to preserve biodiversity as a whole. So these nature enthusiasts help in the conservation of forests and the management of the resources properly, and they are experts in that field. Now we will have a case study about the conservation of forests by the Bishnoi community. The case of Bishnoi's community living in western Rajasthan on the border of the Thar desert. Okay, so Bishnoi community lives in the western Rajasthan on the border of the Thar desert, and the conservation of forest and wildlife has been a religious tenet for them. Okay, so as we discussed before, that the local people who live in forest, they have a tradition, they have traditions which help them in conserving the forest, and hence here also we can see that these Bishnoi community people, they have the religious tenet for forest conservation and wildlife. So here we can see that these Bishnoi people also have a religious tenet for conservation of forest and wildlife. They are living with the basic philosophy that all living things have a right to survive and share all resources. So they are basically trying to make the resources available for everyone and make it a right for all the animals to survive. The Government of India has recently instituted an Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation in the memory of Amrita Devi Bishnoi. So who was this lady, this famous lady, on the name of whom our government has announced a Wildlife Conservation Award? So Amrita Devi Bishnoi was she was a conservationist. Basically, she was a conservationist. She believed in protecting the forest, and in 1931, she sacrificed her life along with 363 others for the protection of khejri. Khejri is basically a tree in Rajasthan, basically found in Rajasthan, and these trees, they are very much. They cover a vast cover. They have a vast presence in Rajasthan, and she did that, and she protected those khejri trees in Khejrali village near Jodhpur in Rajasthan. So she carried out these protests and sacrificed her life along with 363 others. So actually there are people, you can understand how important the conservation of forests is, and there are actually people who exist who have sacrificed their own lives to save these trees, okay, and to save the forests. You can see here that how forests are important. It is very important to save the. In this video we can see that how important these forests are, and how important it is to, to save these forests, because they are a source of habitat for certain animals, and there are certain stakeholders who are dependent on these forests, and we need to conserve these forests. Also there are certain exploitation activities that are going on, and the certain rate of deforestation is also affecting the forest cover on earth. So overall we just need to keep in mind that forests are a major source of resources, and we need to actually protect these forests to save the environment. Damages to the forest. The damage caused to the forest cannot be attributed to only the local people. One cannot turn a blind eye to the deforestation caused by industrial needs or development projects like building roads or dams. The damage caused in these reserves by tourists or the arrangements made for their convenience is also to be considered, and hence we need to understand that there are the stakeholders, the people who are connected to the forest need to keep in mind that these forests are very important for us, and we definitely need to save them. The management of forest resource. Forest resources should be used in a manner that the environment is preserved. The benefits of the controlled exploitation go to the local people, a process in which decentralized economic growth and ecological conservation go hand in hand. The environment is a vast and complex entity that offers a range of natural resources for use, and we need to use these resources with due caution for our economic and social growth and to meet our material aspirations. So we need to manage the forest resource, and we need to understand that the environment is very important to be preserved, and for that there should be a process in which decentralized economic growth and economic conservation should be there, and they should go hand in hand. We'll be talking about the Chipko Andolan. Here you can see that the Chipko Andolan was the Hug the Trees movement, right? It was basically called as the Hug the Tree movement, and was the result of a grassroots level effort to end the alienation of people from their forests. The movement originated from an incident in a remote village called Reni in Garhwal, high up in the Himalayas during the early 1970s. There was a dispute between the local villagers and a logging contractor who had been allowed to fell trees in a forest close to the village. On a particular day, the contractor's workers appeared in the forest to cut the trees while the men folk were absent. Undeterred, the women of the village reached the forest quickly and clasped the tree trunks, thus preventing the workers from felling the trees. Thus, thwarted, the contractor had to withdraw. Experience has taught the people that the destruction of forests affected not just the availability of forest products but also the quality of soil and the resources of water. So it is very important, and in this video you can see that how the Chipko Andolan was carried out, and how Sundarlal Bahuguna was a major person, played a major role in carrying out the movement, and it was a non-violent protest to save the trees. Chipko movement. The Chipko movement or Hug the Trees movement, as we just discussed before, was the result of a grassroots level effort to end the alienation of people from their forests. The Chipko movement quickly spread across communities and medias and forced the government to whom the forest belongs to rethink their priorities in the use of forest lands. You can see here how the women of the village are hugging the tree in order to save it. So participation of the local people can indeed lead to the efficient management of forests. People's participation in the management of forests, as we just discussed about the Chipko Andolan, there was also another thing that in 1972, the West Bengal Forest Department recognized its failure in reviving the degraded Sal forest in the southwestern districts of the state. With the active and willing participation of the local community, the Sal forest of Arabari underwent a remarkable recovery in 1983. A previously worthless forest was valued rupees 12.5 crores. So that is how the people and their efforts can actually help in saving the forest and making a great change. Now we'll be discussing the in-text questions. The first question that we have is, why should we conserve forests and wildlife? You should conserve forest and wildlife because of the reasons that we discussed in the whole video, but again I'll reiterate the reasons. They help in maintaining the ecological balance at a place. They provide us with useful things like rubber, wood, dyes, gum, resin oil, fibers, medicines, wax, honey, fruits, seeds, and etc. They purify the air, control flood, and prevent soil erosion and maintain its fertility. Forests conserve biodiversity and hereditary resources. Ecological stability gets imbalanced due to the damage in diversity. So these were the very, very important steps, and these were the very, very important reasons why we should conserve forests and wildlife. The next question that we have is, suggest some approaches towards the conservation of forests. So some approaches that we can take is that only except some trees, there should be a ban on cutting of forests. Forests stop soil erosion, right? So that is how we can stop soil erosion. Forests should save from fires, okay? They should be saved from forest fires because many forests get destroyed due to forest fires. Forests should be saved from pests and insects. Pesticides, insecticides should be sprayed in forests, and overgrazing should be prohibited. National rules and laws should be strictly enforced to protect the forest. So these are just few steps or few approaches that we can take towards the conservation of forests. So that was all about forests and wildlife in this video, and we learned about the conservation of forests and how we need to protect forests in order to save environment. Thank you so much.